Hi there, I'm Dr. JOYLYN and welcome to this presentation, How to Save Your Marriage Before It's Too Late. I'm going to show you three core elements of this 90-day relationship remodeling that I do to stop the pain, restore the joy and love to your relationship. Oops. So you are in the right place here. If you're married and starting to think about or even talk about breaking up or divorce, and you don't really want that. Deep down inside, you know that is not how you'd like the story to go. Perhaps you or your spouse has already decided to separate and you're trying to prevent getting divorced. Or your spouse has filed for divorce but is willing to reconsider. Maybe you are even the one that filed, but you're willing to reconsider. And you're in the right place if you or your spouse have been arguing a lot, and perhaps those arguments are escalating, maybe even a little violence. And you're worried the only way is to end in divorce, but again, you'd like to have a different outcome. So that's you're in the right place. So who am I? Dr. JOYLYN Maniaci. I am a doctor of naturopathic medicine and a certified life coach and a creatrix. I've created the Happiness Clinic. That's my coaching practice. I'm a relationship alchemist. I specialize in relationship dynamics and communication. I also have the title of happiness facilitator, making sustainable relationships and happiness easier to come by. And a person. I'm a woman who's been in a lot of relationships, a lot of different kinds of relationships, how they began, how they ended, and accumulated a lot of experience and would like to help you out. I consider this the Cliff's Notes, a lot of what not to do, so you don't have to make those same mistakes. Maybe even help you laugh a little bit about some of the things that we do that don't work, but we try so hard to make it work anyway, and offer you a way out and an easier way around some of these seemingly insurmountable problems. So what we're going to learn today is how to get your partner to start listening to you and keep listening to you without being pushy or nagging. The instant relationship reframe technique that quickly brings positivity back into your marriage, not just for you, but for him too. So it actually works for you both. And the fast and proven way to reestablish broken or damaged trust, even if you or they have lied or cheated. So before we get started, let me just say everything I'm about to teach you works. I've used it, my clients use it, and things change dynamically. I have a program where I work one-on-one with women, helping them save their marriages. And I would like to have the opportunity to help you if you think it's a good fit. So at the end of this, I'm going to show you how to book a free consultation so that we can talk about your situation specifically and make sure that we're a good fit before moving forward. And it's okay if you don't want to contact me. If you would just like to have this free talk and that be where, as far as you go with it, that is great. I will not hassle you or push you any farther because that is annoying and I respect that. So if you have a question here, please ask. You can just type it in the chat. I feel like I'm not making my words correctly right now. Or just raise your hand and I will get to them. And here we go. One more thing, I have a private Facebook group, Relationship Real Talk with Dr. JOYLYN Maniaci. And if you join that group, I have a power hour every Wednesday at noon where we have a group coaching call just for this group. You can ask your questions. So again, it's some group coaching in between individual sessions for those in the 90-day relationship remodel program. But if you're on this tonight, I'm offering you a chance to get in the group so that you could have a little FaceTime with a coach working on your specific problems and let me be a resource for you. So I totally encourage you to join the group. It's a really great group with real talk, no fluff. So let's get started. How to get your partner to start listening and keep listening without being pushy or naggy. In fact, he won't even know you're doing it. So here's what you've probably tried that didn't work or isn't working, and perhaps you're trying to force it a little bit more to try to make it work still. Asking more frequently or more forcefully. Expressing irritation or anger when you have to ask for things that are obvious or when he doesn't do what you've asked. Justifying your request. Telling him how you feel so that he knows how his lack of cooperation is affecting you. Or only asking for small things or giving up altogether. Why that's not working and why that's not going to work is it sets the wrong tone when you ask more frequently or more forcefully. It's what Dr. John Gottman at the Love Lab in Seattle calls harsh startup. It's creating a hurdle that must be reached before even getting to the request. It just sort of sets up a defensiveness and a resistance from the get-go. When you express irritation or anger for things that you think are obvious, it sets you up for failure or disappointment. Expectation kills joy and contribution. And that expectation is when something is obvious to you, you get in a state of mind that thinks that that means it is obvious, bar none. But men and women have entirely different gender training. And so what it is that they are trained and entrained to pay attention to are very different. So that what seems obvious to a woman may be completely not obvious to a man, and vice versa. So when we expect and sort of project that they are operating in the same way, or even if we've said things over and over and over that that makes it obvious, it actually just sort of sets up a baseline irritation in us when it isn't recognized before we have to say anything. So it's really setting up for failure and disappointment, frustration. When you express irritation and anger when he doesn't do what you've asked, you're decreasing cooperation and increasing resistance, because that irritation, anger, again, coming from a place of expectation and a higher baseline of frustration, you tend to get out of the requesting mode and just asking for help into a demanding mode and sort of a controlling domination standpoint. And that will create a power differential that is not appreciated, not just by men, but really by any other human. No one likes to be told or forced or coerced into doing something. And when we ask with a harsh tone, ask with a lot of expectation, or just outrightly demonstrate our irritation, anger, it goes into the demand category, and it will instantly set up defense and resistance. When you tell him how you're feeling so that he knows how he's affecting you, you actually start to confuse the issue and dilute the request, making the actual request unclear. A lot of guys really are desiring to contribute to you, but they don't actually know how. And when there's all this feelings talk at the beginning, it can kind of fry the circuits a little bit of like, there's too much information, I don't know what to process. That's one thing. Or it could be then that he doesn't know if, and if you're like a lot of women and in a typical relationship, male, female, when you tell him about feelings, he goes into fixing mode, and that's frustrating because you really just want somebody to listen. So then when you actually want something done and you put all these feelings things in, he doesn't know if he's supposed to just listen or actually do something. And then there's just a lot of information in there, and so not actually sure what the actual request is, how they can actually contribute to you. So you're actually sort of just confusing the issue. Another thing is what I had said is justifying your request. And that too puts a lot of information in front and sets the wrong tone, because what a lot of women have internalized is that we should be able to do everything on our own. And when we can't, or get irritated that we feel that we must, we've gotten to a point where it's actually hard to ask for help. So we almost justify, qualify, and validate our own request by building a case for why the request is valid. I have been up since 5 a.m. I just got home from this, and now this has happened. I have a load of laundry here. I'm cooking dinner, and I need this to get done. The request isn't clear, and he's hearing a tone of, I've done so much, you are letting me down, is the tone that comes out, even though I think for a lot of women, that's not what they're actually trying to communicate. It's actually just an internal insecurity that it's actually okay to ask for help, and it totally is. And when you remove all that extra information, the request is much clearer. If you have resorted to only asking for small things or giving up altogether, you're diminishing confidence and trust in your partner, in your relationship, in your ability to get help from your partner. You're assuming non-compliance. And that just sort of, over time, diminishes the strength and ability for you guys to lean on each other. That's not sustainable. So what do you do instead? I call this sweeten the tart. Is instead of putting a lot of information in front of the request, putting a lot of feelings in front, trying to mask your insecurity by building a case for yourself, starting with a harsh tone, get clear on what you're asking for. Know what it is, the outcome that you would like to have happen. That's your own internal work, is getting clear on what it is that you would like. Then call him by name. When you use somebody's first name, you instantly humanize them. You make the playing fields equal and they feel respected and seen. You can also use a pet name that is likely to elicit cooperation, such as lovers. Lovers love to love and express love. So lover is one that you can say, sometimes I'll use tall guy, because he actually likes that we have that going on and that he can help me just by being taller than me. Man, I'll sometimes say, because he actually likes that. That's when I ask him to do manly things. So call him a nice name in a nice tone, and then make your request. Tell him how it will contribute. That piece is optional, but stop there. Keep it simple. When you know the outcome, that's all you're requesting, is whatever step you need him to fill in order to get that outcome. And you call him by a name that's likely to get cooperation for that step. And then say thank you when he fulfills the request. That's very important follow-up. So here's why this formula works. It softens the tone, because it's not leading with any negative emotions or justification or extraneous information. It simplifies the communication. The request is clear. You know what the outcome it is you're going for, so then you can request a specific action or object that needs to be given to you, contributed to you. It decreases resistance and defensiveness. By calling him by name, you humanize him, and he recognizes that you see him as a person and that you're requesting something and not demanding. It also works. So then you're encouraged to continue to keep doing it. And then when you say thank you, he feels appreciated. And what you appreciate appreciates. I said this to a client the other day. Whenever you want more of something, just start saying thank you, because it just builds. What appreciate and what is appreciated appreciates. So that when he contributes to you and you verbalize your appreciation, he feels gratified and wants to do that again. That's a positive reward system going on. So it works. So sweeten the tart. You can feel heard, appreciated, and be a team together. So some of the questions that have come in through email over the time or two that I've talked about this in the Power Hour group and among some other videos that I do is, why is it up to me? Why is it up to a woman to do this? And the short answer is, it's not. There is no rule that says it's the woman that has to use this formula. Men, you can also use this formula. It will work. But why is it up to you is not that you should do it or you have to do it, but you can do it. And if you do it, it works. And it will change the dynamic of your relationship. It will get you to recognize each other as equals by calling them by name. It will make you aware of your communication, what it is that you're going for, and what you may be over communicating or overemphasizing that's actually diluting the request and making compliance and cooperation less likely. You're also here. You're here, so you're the leader, which means you have to lead and take the first step if you would like to get where you're going. And so it's not that there is any rule that it has to be you that does it, but you are the one that's now equipped with this. So if you use it, it will work and things will change. How do I know what to call him or her? A name that will elicit support, and there is magic in hearing your own name said out loud. It really is like music to our ears when we hear our own name. It makes us human. It makes us feel special. It has an amazing psychological capacity to make us feel seen. What is so different about this is, like I had just mentioned, it's changing a lot of subtle dynamics. It's getting the demanding out of there. It's changing the tone, softening the tone. It's making the request clear. It's even requiring us to get clear about what it is that we'd actually like so that we can ask for it. It is incorporating gratitude so that you can have more of it. And does it really work? It really does. One of the clearest examples that I have is a time when I had a office job. I did the regular 9 to 5, and my husband does events, so he is on and off. And at this time, I had to get ready for work, and he was sleeping away, sawing logs in the bedroom. And I could feel my irritation build because, again, we talk about things that should be obvious. It seemed very obvious to me that since I had to get ready for work, that he could be up and supporting me. That day I really wanted coffee, but did not get out of bed in time to get the makeup, the hair, the dog out for a walk, and coffee, and still arrive at work on time. So I really wanted coffee, and because I wanted it and I was slightly irritated with myself already for snoozing too many times, I was also getting irritated with him because it would be so obviously simple for him to help me out. But I did that way, I think maybe only a few days before. We'd had that very same scenario. You could say that the common thing was me not getting out of bed on time, but I would have said it was him being lazy. Just an interesting point of view. But it didn't work out well that last time. So I had just written about this not too many days before and reread that blog, I think the night before. And I was like, okay, I'm actually just going to do that. Like, I'm not going to let the irritation and the frustration win. I'm just going to try it different. And I went into the bedroom and I just laid on top of him and I gave him a kiss and I said, hey, lover, would you make me coffee before I go to work? And he turns and he looks at me and he smiles and he says, I'd love to. And he was out of bed in less than 30 seconds, which is amazing because we both like to snooze. And I went to work with warm coffee in hand and a smile and a kiss and a wave, him sending me off to work. And it was fantastic. And I was blown away that if I just put my irritation on pause for a minute and did it this way and addressed him in a different way, how much more ease there was and what a nicer tone my whole day went on. So it really does work. And now we're to the instant relationship reframe technique that quickly brings positivity back into your marriage and more ease into your life. More ease, please. Things are hard enough. Life will throw enough curveballs. Why make it harder? But here's what you may have tried that hadn't worked, isn't working, and maybe you're still trying to make work. But talking about what you don't like, what you don't want, what you don't have, or what you would like to avoid. Trying to fix what isn't working. Trying to prevent the reoccurrence of a past failure, pain, or heartbreak. You may be crystal clear on what he needs to fix or change. And again, it might be obvious and seemingly super simple. Or you might assume innocence or powerlessness, saying because it's something that he needs to fix, there's nothing you can do. But here's why that's not working and why that's never going to work. When you talk about what you don't like, what you don't want, what you don't have, or what you would like to avoid in trying to prevent the occurrence of a past failure or heartbreak, you put your focus on the past and you emphasize that, and that's where your energy goes, is to something that's no longer changeable. It just sort of pulls your energy back. And if you're driving, if you've ever driven and you look out the rear view mirror too long, you start going off to one side or another. If you live your life like that, if you drive like that, you're going to crash because your focus is on what's behind you. When you talk about what you don't like, what you don't want, what you don't have, or what you would like to avoid, you also undermine your confidence. That's because we are always in constant conversation with our subconscious, and it has always got a recorder on, recording everything that you say. And when you talk about what you don't like and what you don't want, what you don't have, what you would like to avoid, your subconscious just lets you know, like, oh, this is what you like to talk about. So it will create a system to where more of that shows up. The universe is very objective in the way that it abides abundantly or provides abundantly. But if you're saying, hey, I'm giving a lot of energy to all these things, it says, oh, you put energy in this, this is your priority, that's what you'll get more of. And it starts to undermine your confidence because then all of a sudden you're looking around and you just keep seeing more of what you don't like, what you don't want, what you don't have. And it makes you feel like there's nothing you can do because this is all that's showing up. And it starts to degrade our belief in our ability to actually turn things around. When you try to fix what isn't working, you end up fixating on the problem. So again, where your attention goes, your energy flows. So when you put your attention on fixing something, the attention is actually on the problem. So that's where more energy goes and actually energizes the problem. And in some ways, this is how our whole reality is built, is cause effects, find the problem, fix it, then things will work out. And it's a very mathematical linear formula, but it doesn't work. Even if we seem to solve one problem, you'll notice another one pops up. Or in trying to do this, you're reminded of another thing that irritated you. And it just keeps the focus on problem. So they keep popping up. So it just sort of emphasizes problems. When you get clear on what he needs to fix or change, you create antagonism and opposition within your relationship. And that means almost like magnets, you're going to start to repel. You're going to start to work against each other when you create this kind of dynamic between you. It also avoids your responsibility and diminishes your power and contribution both to the problem and to the solution. So that when you're so focused on what they're doing and what they need to do, you are conveniently ignorant to what it is that you could change or do differently so that a lot of this would go away. Because we are a half of it, it's not to say problems or issues are equally, it's always 50-50. That isn't it. But we're never powerless in how we have the ability to change something to create change within the whole dynamic. But if we only look at what they need to do, we don't even see that. And again, like assuming innocence or powerlessness, that avoids responsibility and diminishes your own power and contribution to the problem and to the solution. You're just not going to see it if you're only looking at what they're doing, or if you just say it's all them, I can't do anything. It's sort of a convenient oh, I can't do anything, but it will then also put you in a powerless position, and that then you are on their timeline and constantly trying to prove or convince them that they need to change. And likely that sets up a lot of defensiveness and resistance, because who wants to hear about all the things that they're doing wrong that they need to fix? No one. So what to do instead is what I call the relationship reframe. Talk about things that are going well that make you feel good. And when I say feel good, I mean like light, bubbly, enthusiastic, energetic, action oriented, even a little bit spacious, like there's space in between the cells in your body, the molecules in your body, to where it's like a light flowy feeling, like it's not contracted, it's not heavy, because sometimes feeling like you're right, like mic drop, I just did that, doesn't have that light and bubbly feeling. And we might confuse that powerful feeling as good, when really good is actually a wholesome, light, and spacious feeling. And we a lot of times have a habit of talking about what we don't like and what we don't want. And so we can change how we're feeling and talk about things that are going well. Talk about the future and what you'd like to have. So it's not about all the things that you don't have, it's about the things that you would like to fill your life with. So it's just sort of an attitude adjustment. And it's not about the past that you want to avoid or that has to heal or be made up for before you can have anything. So it's not past based. There's nothing about the past that that makes it so that you can't have the future that you like to have. You just start prioritizing and energizing and focusing on and talking about and getting excited about the future. You can also talk about your partner in a way that exalts you. When we're talking about what we don't like, what we don't want, what we don't have, oh, your partner's great, he does this, I wish my guy would do that, or he never does this, or oh, I wish it would just be that way. And again, we're always in conversation with our subconscious. So when we have a partner that sucks and constantly lets us down, we're telling ourselves that we either don't have good taste in partners or we don't deserve a good partner. And we internalize that. That will diminish our confidence and then make us less likely to have a fulfilling relationship, either now or with a different person if we move on from here. But if you talk about your partner in a way that exalts you, you're both lifted up. Because if you have a great and wonderful partner, you must be some hot shit to be able to attract and keep such an amazing partner. You get to be lucky in love. Like, what a fabulous feeling. So start talking about your partner and highlighting the ways that they contribute to your life and the attributes of them that you like and enjoy. And you'll, again, what you appreciate appreciates, you'll get more of that. Using I messages when we are in a habit of destructive language, we a lot of times start the sentences with you, because it's so obvious what you need to do to change this and what you need to fix. And sometimes we'll say we because we know that there's some stuff that we got to do, but it's about keeping it at a problem level, sometimes being unclear about what it is. But if we can change how we speak and talk about I, it decreases the defensiveness, because when you say you, people are instantly aware of an accusation. When you say I, it again makes you become more aware of what it is that you'd actually like, what you're actually going for. And there's less defensiveness or resistance to that, because then it's not about trying to change them. It's about sharing with them what it is that you'd like to have for your life, and how they can contribute actually becomes clearer and easier. And saying thank you more often. It's courtesy actually goes a long way, and it very much gets underplayed and um yeah, just underutilized in intimate relationships, especially in intimate relationships and often families. Not please and thank you, common courtesy and manners actually go a long way to show respect, to show affection, even. So saying thank you more often will also work. And here's why. You shift the focus away from the past and problems, and you prioritize your future, your blessings, the contributions from other people, the contribution that you are to your life and relationship, and solutions that you're going to start seeing because you're not so problem focused. You change the message you're giving your subconscious about who you are, what you deserve, and what you're looking for. When you look for problems and always talking about something, your subconscious, you train your brain to look for those things. If you start talking about what's going well and what you enjoy about your partner, you start training your brain to look for that. There's clarity for you on your thoughts, your feelings. You are more vulnerable, and that is not in the militaristic sense of open to attack. Vulnerability is what allows for intimacy. It decreases the defensiveness. It takes down the barriers that are between me and you, or you and your partner, and just says, hey, here I am. And when you say, hey, here I am, and you don't have all these barriers, you're more attractive because I can see you. And it engenders intimacy, and actually allows the other person to take down their barriers, because then they feel safer because they know you're not hiding any weapons behind that wall. Gratitude is the alchemizer. There is so much research coming out now about how gratitude is one of the fastest ways to change your brain. You can actually remodel your brain and change synaptic patterns, and by doing so, changing your brain chemistry. And what that does, again, is what you appreciate appreciates. When you have gratitude for the people in your life, for you, for your body, for the air that you breathe, for the beautiful sunset that you're witnessing, you just get more of it, and your life fills up and everything gets better. You also get positive attention for having fresh content and a positive attitude. A lot of the stories that we tell and the conversations that we have are actually sort of broken records. They're almost like fillers, like the music on telephone calls when you're on hold. It's almost like, oh, hi, here you are, here you are. It's old, and then if that's what's going on there, it's just a loop that kind of puts everybody else on an autopilot loop. But if you start changing what you talk about and are lifting things up, you're going to start getting noticed positively from your partner, and it's going to be appreciated from them, and you're going to feel better. And then you're filling the world with fresh content instead of that old humdrum lame ass story that you've been telling yourself and your friends for so long. And when you start feeling good and you're changing what you're telling your subconscious about who you are and what you deserve, your confidence is going to grow, and you become sexier and more attractive. And by being sexier and more attractive, you're going to elicit more affection from your partner. And you're starting to appreciate them more and be more vulnerable and have less barriers between you, so that you guys are going to be closer. And it's just going to be so lovely. And I want you to have this feeling. So that's what I call empowering language, feeling good about your relationship, being happy with your partner. It's an instant relationship reframe, a little attitude adjustment, some language tweaks, go a really long way. So, questions about this. What if I need to vent? Because that will happen, especially if there's a lot of pain, you're not out of the woods yet. There's still some angry, harsh words coming out, and you just have to vent. You know, it's not a positive thing you're going to be sharing with anyone. What then? It's about paying attention to the energy. And when you vent, that's exactly what will happen. You will actually vent and discharge and release pressure so that the intensity of the situation will dissipate as you are able to tell your story. That's venting. Versus there's a time when we tell our story and we re-trigger ourselves and we get amped again and all upset. Then we are no longer venting. We are actually going back into a trigger trauma pain loop. So it's just a matter of paying attention to how we're feeling during and after our vent sesh. And if you feel it going into the amping up, you have to stop. And it will be very unpleasant because there will just be this intensity of emotion. But if you just stop, that intensity will diminish over time because it needs a story to feed it and keep it going. And if you don't give it that story, it will start to diminish. Now, if there's just a lot of intensity and a lot of hurt, and you have a person and a place to tell your story, and it helps calm you down because maybe there was something about it that you missed, maybe you just needed somebody else to witness and hold a space for you and give you a hug, you will notice that the charge is dropping as you're telling the story and there's release. So that's knowing when you're venting, venting is okay. Now, you might say, I feel like I'm lying when I'm only talking about good stuff in my life, or like I'm making stuff up good about him. And that might be how it feels at first, because it's a habit of talking about what we don't like, what we don't have, what we want to avoid, what a dumbass he is. Those who become habits. So that's going to be the easy, less resistance sort of path at the beginning. But we need to reverse that because we know that's not working for us. So we have to put effort and energy into reversing the cycle. So slowing the inertia and then getting it to go in reverse so that we can change direction. So it will feel a little bit unnatural, uneasy, and you might feel like, I don't even know what to say. But work through that discomfort because it will get easier. And then you don't have to shoot for the moon and say, hey, we're getting close to divorce. I really can't stand it when he does this, this, and this. He hasn't been faithful, or he hasn't been a good supporter, or whatever the issue is. Now, he doesn't have to turn into the best thing since sliced bread and the answer to all your prayers. But somewhere in between there, you can see he's really good with the kids. He's always been good about making me coffee in the morning. His smile will light up a room. I love the sound of his laughter. I like the way he looks in my eyes and touches my hair. Whatever it is, start with what is available and have gratitude for it. You can say thank you to them. You can say thank you to the universe for providing that for you. Thank you to yourself for being here. And it will get better and easier, and more things will become available for you to talk about that's going well and good in your life. And as you shift your focus from the past into the future, that also will become easier to talk about too. And again, what's different about this is changing the entire relationship you have with yourself, even, and what it is that you're telling your subconscious about who you are and what you deserve, and putting the energy into the future to create a future instead of to avoid the past. So this is so fundamentally different because from the get-go, you're actually able to move closer to your target just by looking at it and setting your gaze. You're going to be much more accurate and get there so much faster just by doing that. And will this really work? It totally will. I had a client and she was in the 90-day relationship remodel program I talk about. And one of the very first things we did was when she was telling me about what was going on, she knew exactly what he needed to change. Everything, he's doing this and this and this and this. I've been talking about this for years and why he just won't do this. And it's so simple. He needs to do this. I said, all right, I hear that. And he's not on the phone, so I can't work with him, but you're here. And what I'm hearing a lot of is a lot of these sentences start with you. You need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, and should. It should be this way. You should already know this, should. And so just those two words was her homework, to be aware of those two words. And the first time she got back to me, oh my God, like, I can't believe I use those words so often. But then continuing the next week, and she's like, I have been doing so much better at using iMessages, and I haven't been nagging as much, and it's just been easier. And then I think it was 4 weeks in where she's like, oh my goodness, you won't believe this. He just asked me for the number for the eye doctor. Because one of the things she had been bothering about was he wasn't taking care of himself. He hadn't been to the doctor in who knows how long. He was eating horribly and gaining weight and letting a lot of things slide. And without her, like her backing off, she hadn't mentioned this in weeks, and she changed some of her language and become aware of some of the patterns that were going on. He actually recognized that she was really coming from a place of she cared about him and she wanted him to be healthy because they have a family and she just wanted him to be around for a long time, but it wasn't coming out that way. But he started to recognize that. And then without her having the pressure on him, the message, we do have partners that actually listen to us. It's just there's a lot of resistance because of how we're talking about him, but it internalized, and he started taking an interest in taking care of himself and asking her to contribute to that. And it was amazing. She was blown away, and I was just so stoked to hear about that for her. So it really does work. All right, now this one's a toughie. Well, it can be. But the fast and proven way to reestablish broken or damaged trust, even in the most difficult situations. I'm gonna take a drink of water before I keep going. Now, in recognizing that trust has been damaged and that it needs to be repaired in order to move forward, here's what you might have tried that didn't work or is not working. And that's talking about the situation or asking to talk about the situation if there's a definite issue or instance that has caused the wedge between you. Badgering, arguing, yelling, making threats, holding things in, not talking about it, stonewalling or leaving, or maybe these things have been done to you, crying, throwing things, otherwise expressing your feelings when you don't feel heard or when he's not listening, threatening or attempting self-harm or harming another, or even listening, but really listening to respond or listening so that you will get listened to. So here's why those things aren't working and why they're not going to work even if you try harder. Talking about the situation or asking to talk about the situation often elicits what I call the escape reflex. I don't think there's anything scientific about that. That's just what I've named it. But men hate the words, can we talk? To them, what they've heard is you're in trouble and they just want to run and they do not want to be audience for whatever it is that they're going to hear. So it just, on a very pragmatic level, just does not work. If you're badgering, arguing, yelling, or making threats, you're actually very unlikely to be heard. The one who's yelling the loudest is usually the one who's least likely to be heard. And this type of behavior can actually be triggering and elicit a trauma response from the person that you are badgering, arguing, or yelling. And again, maybe this is happening to you. Maybe it is them that are yelling at you, he's yelling at you, and you just go into this place where you go into like a very traumatic place, a trauma response, and then all your creativity, all your patience, everything is blown, and you then react with in a trauma pattern. Holding things in, not talking, stonewalling, or leaving, these behaviors communicate mistrust and even contempt. Eye rolling is also contemptuous. That's what teenagers have let us know, that we should die and fall off the face of the planet. But doing that to your partner actually tells them the same thing. So those kind of behaviors do not help to rebuild trust. And these two can also elicit a trauma pattern or reaction, because if anyone has an issue with neglect or abandonment or fear of abandonment in there, when you stonewall or leave, that gets triggered in them. And so then they behave through a trauma response. And when I talk about trauma responses, the reason that that is such a communication breakdown is when you go into a trauma response, you then are behaving emotionally at the age that the trauma happened. The age when that trigger was installed, that's the emotional and intellectual level you are now operating on. You don't think so because your body's still big, so you can't see the difference, but that's what's actually happening psychologically. Crying, throwing things, dramatically expressing your feelings when you don't feel heard, threatening or attempting to self-harm or harm another is a manipulation and controlling tactic. These two, they're ineffective at actually getting what you'd like. But if you are doing them, or if somebody has done that to you, let us remove the judgment, because that too is often a response to trauma. When we try to control someone else, it's because we are so in defense of and reaction to a time when we were so completely out of control. And there's just so much overwhelming fear that then there's almost a life built, and now a habit of communication built around controlling things so that you don't have that sense of overwhelm and fear again. So it's not about judging them, because let's have some space and compassion. Some people, a lot of us have come through a lot that we might not talk about, or that might not be completely apparent. Also, when we talk about trauma, if you're behaving at the level of that, we can't always look at it from our adult logical brain. Sometimes it's seemingly innocuous things that induce the trauma. Like a fear of abandonment, we could have just been lost in the mall for 10 minutes. But if we're 3 or 4, that was very emotionally intense situation where you really didn't know where you were, you really didn't know where your parents were, and you really didn't feel safe. And that gets internalized and stored in your body. So almost everyone I know has some sort of trauma pattern, but it's just knowing that they're there and how to work through them so that you're not triggered anymore. But why some of these communication things, they don't work and they won't work, is because they keep triggering this trauma reaction. Now, when you're listening to respond, or listening so that you'll be listened to, is like giving a gift with strings attached, and that leads to resentment and mistrust. You can't build communication if you have an ulterior motive. If somebody sniffs an ulterior motive, your attempt to rebuild trust is blown. So that's not going to work. If you're going to give a gift, it's got to be without strings attached. So what to do instead is to listen. And here's what listening is. Be quiet. You can't listen if you're talking. Be open. Don't assume you know what they're going to say, and be willing to receive whatever it is that they say. Be quiet some more. It's okay if you don't have an immediate response, because that means you are no longer in automatic pilot mode. This is actually a good thing, but it's okay if you don't have an immediate response. Don't rush them. If you're really listening, And this might be the first time that you've really offered to listen, or the first time that someone has ever actually listened to them. They might not know how to respond. So if they don't have an immediate response, that's okay too. Give them some space. Be honest. If you're not able to really be present and listen at the time, say so. It might be because of circumstances. If your kiddo's tugging at your sleeve, or a pot of water is boiling over, or your boss just called, or maybe it is something that has said is just too painful that you need some time for yourself, that's okay. Just say so. But what you're doing is saying, I would like to listen to you and I intend to hear you. I just need some space for myself. So you're not just turning your back, you're not stonewalling them. You're telling them, I'd like to be here for you. I just need this for myself, and we will come back to this. So it's different that way. But if you will notice before that a lot of the things that aren't working, they're not working because they keep triggering a trauma response. That means if somebody is doing this to you, you are also having a lot of trauma be triggered and coming up. And sometimes when we behave this way, we can actually trigger ourselves. So there is often a trust of ourselves that is broken. So listening will actually work for you to rebuild your trust in you too, and diminish the pain and heal the trauma. So also listen to you. Don't keep talking over yourself. Don't let your self-doubt always speak louder. Don't let your pain always speak louder. Sometimes you have to be quiet so that you can hear what is coming up, what the trauma actually is. Sometimes the pain needs to speak and not be spoken over. Don't assume you know what's going on with you. Be curious about you and be willing to receive what comes up when you actually give yourself some space to listen. And it's okay if you don't know what to do. And it's okay if you don't really know how to immediately change things. That's okay. But listen to yourself, and then don't listen so that you can make it stop. Listen with no strings attached, and listen just because you're willing to give yourself a gift and be there for you and be a healing agent for yourself. So this listening is so amazing because it will rebuild the broken trust in you that you're okay. The world is safe and that you can handle what's coming at you. And it also works to rebuild the trust with a partner when there's damage between you two. So why it works though, why it's actually working, is you get attention because you're interrupting a pattern. So a lot of times when we're talking, and even in our attempts to rebuild a bridge, we go into our rut and our default mode. But when you actually listen and there's actually space for someone, and even sometimes silence, you interrupt a pattern and do it without negative or abusive behavior that will re-trigger and start a pain cycle. You can quickly correct miscommunication, inaccurate assumptions, and get awareness and understanding of a situation. Like a lot of times, there are times when we are actually trying to be there for each other, but the way that we're doing it is not making sense, not getting through. And we'll assume that this person is just trying to get in our way and just trying to mess us up, but they're looking at, I'm going to help them and I'm going to do this. And if you can actually listen and have effective communication about this, you can be like, oh, they were actually trying to help me. Hey, thank you so much for trying to help me. Here's what would work for me better. And if that person's willing to receive, this would work for me better, and it's not about you did it wrong, then you can be like, oh, I can help them better. And it actually makes a lot more ease between the two of you. Listening stops the cycle of hurt and trauma because you're not triggering. There's not more triggers being tripped, and the things don't escalate. And it opens the door to a different outcome because you've interrupted a pattern. you're no longer on default mode, so the outcome isn't driven in one direction. You actually have opened the door to a new possibility for a different way to communicate with each other. You're creating a new model for communication and just opening the door for a different resolution. And gifts bridge gaps. If you're listening, truly listening and giving them space and being willing to be there and receive what's being said, not react if there's still a little bit of attitude or snarkiness or pain that's speaking, and you give that gift without strings attached, you start to untangle the conditionality of love and of giving gifts. And you also show, by virtue of being someone with no ulterior motives, that builds trust and things change. When you're correcting miscommunication and you're giving gifts without strings attached and you're being a resource for yourself for your own healing, things change. So if you do something different, you will get something different. So if you're not listening to respond, if you're actually listening and hearing something that you've never heard before, things will change and you can enjoy the change. So why should I listen if I'm the one who's not being listened to? If you don't feel listened to, check in, because a lot of times it is ourselves who are not listening to us. We think it's our partner that's not listening, but a lot of times it's because we've just been repeating the same story or just saying, you're going to be fine, it's fine, forget about it, or just keep going anyway, or whatever it is that we're not listening. So sometimes if we give ourselves the gift of listening to ourselves, feeling not listened to actually diminishes. We have a relationship with ourselves that is often broken for many different reasons, but if that gets repaired, a lot of the need from the outside for validation goes away. So if you're not being listened to, listen to yourself. Also, in couples especially, and within families, a lot of us feel the same way. Nobody's feeling listened to, and everybody's talking over everyone else, and it's a mess. So that if you're not feeling listened to, there's actually a great likelihood that your partner also isn't feeling listened to. So that you won't even know, if you don't listen, if that is what they're experiencing. So you really, it's again about leadership and being willing to try something different, because it's clear that what you have been doing isn't working. So just doing something different so that you can have a different outcome. Now, if it started off well, but then you got mad and you started interrupting and screaming again, and stop. Just stop and call a timeout and say, hey, I would like to continue this conversation. I would like to listen to you, but at the moment I'm very charged and there's a lot of pain, and I just need some time for this to decompress, to diminish, so that I can be present with you again. It's okay. Listening is not a skill that is valued in our education system or in our culture in general. So this is a skill that a lot of us really aren't good at. So don't expect perfection or that you're going to be great at it right away. Give yourself time to improve and practice at it. Just take off the judgment. It will make the improvement go that much faster. Now, if he does say the same thing that he always does, because I'm not supposed to expect that I know what he's going to say, but there he goes and does it again, that's okay. Listen again. And maybe you might hear a difference in the tone. Maybe you might see some body language that are letting you know that the words and the feelings aren't congruent, and you can be curious about that. There might be something in the message that's actually you may have missed the first time. Or if they do say the same thing and maybe it's a jerk response, you don't have to react to it. You can also get better at not reacting and not escalating and triggering. Will this really work? Yes, it does. Again, a personal example, there was a time, and perhaps I'm sure almost everybody I've talked to, it was a fight that I have no idea what it was about. No idea, but we were both entrenched in our points of views, and we were going to fight till seemingly the death, to prove that we were right. And it was going back and forth. And one of those where, oh, lots of arguing, escalating, and then it starts to get better, and then somebody says something and it's all there again, you know? Um, and you're just kind of stuck in this loop, you know? And we had been at it for way longer than we should have. You know, it always feels like 10 minutes, but then you look at the clock and you're like, oh my God, it's after midnight and we should have been in bed a long time ago. So we were laying in bed and still irritated with each other. And, you know, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm a coach. How am I so bad at this? What is going on? You know, I should be better at this. How do I change this? Because I don't like to go to bed mad, and I don't even remember what we're arguing about. And man, it's just got to get better than this. Like, this sucks. And so I think I just asked a question. I was trying to redirect, and I asked a question, and he came back with something super sarcastic and snarky, you know, and ugh. But I just said, you know, from that response, that's usually a response from somebody in pain. Are you in pain? And I was laying next to him in bed. I don't think we were totally touching, but I tell you, I could feel his whole body relax. And he said, "Yes." And now I don't know about you, but when somebody releases that much and you can tell that their barriers just totally drop and they're being 100% honest, it's hard to stay mad at them. So I actually hugged him and I said, "I'm sorry. What is hurting you?" And then he told me a lot of it was things that I had said. And now that was not pleasant to hear. And, you know, I had talked about earlier how, assuming innocence and powerlessness, I thought that I was virtually useless and worthless in relationships. And that actually conveniently allowed me to say or do anything and think that I had no impact. But actually, my words hurt as much as his words hurt me. And so I'd been saying some mean things in between, and some cutting remarks, and didn't realize that I actually, like, he loved me enough to let me in and let himself hurt because of something I said. And it really made me realize, oh my goodness, I've been thinking that I didn't matter. So anything I said, it would never matter. It didn't make any difference. And so I had to, like, receive that information, but then that finally got through to me that night, and I could correct how I was communicating. And then that fight was over. What had been, seriously, I think 3 hours of argument was over. And we went to bed embracing. So listening really does work. It really does. So, do you guys have any questions? I know it's right at the hour, and I want to keep it to an hour because these replays, you know, sometimes you guys are busy. And hey, if you're looking at divorce, you just don't want to be feeling, we're talking about these things perhaps. So, what we learned today is how to get your partner to start listening to you and keep listening to you without being pushy or nagging. So you do that by being clear on what it is you'd like, the outcome that you're looking for. Then you call him by name, you keep your request simple, and then show gratitude. The instant relationship reframe technique that quickly brings positivity back into your marriage. You talk about your partner and your marriage and your life in a way that lifts you up, and you cultivate and express gratitude. And the fast and proven way to reestablish broken or damaged trust, even when they or you have lied or cheated, is to listen with no strings attached. That's what we got today. And what I want you to take from this, if nothing else, is that there is nothing wrong with you. Relationship problems, even to the extent that you're looking at divorce or it's already started, it's not evidence that there's something wrong with you or your partner. It's just evidence that something isn't working. And you have the power to change those things. Once you recognize what you may have done that's not working, and I told you some of those, then you can find out what does work. And I showed you some of those. So you now have the tools and the power to change things. And it's not that you should or that you have to, it's that you can, and things change if you do. And it is totally okay if you don't know what to say or do next. It's actually a good thing because it means you're no longer operating on autopilot. So here's how we can work together to save your marriage. The first step is a free initial consultation, and that's where we're just going to have a conversation about what's going on for you and make sure we're a good match. It's not about sales, there's no pressure. We're just going to talk and make sure that your situation and my skills is a match for the situation. Once you choose to proceed, if you do, then you'll have an intake appointment. So this is your first coaching session, and it includes an in-depth conversation to get clarity on your goals and for us to create an action plan so that you can reach your goals the fastest. Then you move into active coaching. You'll learn your strengths. We're going to work on the obstacles, the weaknesses. We're going to weed out those insecurities, and we're going to replace those bad communication habits so that you can have improved communication and confidence. And then finally, we're going to celebrate your renewed strong marriage and the increased attention and affection that you're getting from your partner. So that is how the 90-day relationship remodel works. If it's something you're interested in the replay link, I will send a link for requesting your initial consultation so we can get you on the books for that and get you started. And if there are any questions, feel free to email me. I would love to be a resource for you. Join Relationship Real Talk with Dr. JOYLYN Maniaci and get some group coaching every Wednesday at noon. And that's done on Facebook Live, so you, again, have access to the replays there if you're not available to join live. And thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I look forward to meeting you and working with you and you having a great marriage. So thank you again, and I will talk to you again soon, hopefully.